Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Brandy Havens. I'm a full-time faculty member in the accounting department at the Forbes School of Business and Technology. I'm going to be the host of this session today. If there aren't enough seats, design a bigger table. Open access as a model for leadership. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is going to be recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you'd like to use it, click on the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, you are in for a real treat. Today, our presenters are very own Stephani Kilby. She has dedicated a professional career, over a decade of experience in higher education. Her versatile careers included key roles in the Registrar, Quality Assurance, Student Services, and currently Student Success. Her journey as an adult student and lifelong learner has fueled her passion for supporting, advocating for, empowering, and enriching the educational journey of students. Stephani is a staunch advocate for student success, focusing on creating an inclusive and empowering environment that fosters growth and achievement. We are absolutely thrilled to have her with us today, where she is going to share her insights and passion on open access leadership. We want this to be an engaging session for everyone today. So throughout the presentation, as you have questions, feel free to pop those into the chat. I'm going to be monitoring the chat throughout the session to accumulate those questions, and we'll save a few minutes at the end to address as many of those questions as possible. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to Stephani Kilby.
Thank you, Brandy. I just want to bring you with me to all of my meetings, and every time I have to make an introduction and just turn it over to you. You are wonderful. So happy to be here at TLC. Before we were starting, I was telling Brandy and Mallory that this is just my favorite week out of the year. Whether presenting or watching sessions or engaging in the conversation boards, like what a great way to fill our cups, to share our knowledge, to learn, to think about new things, all of these things. So very excited to share this time with all of you. I'm going to start by just giving you a glimpse into my world, and my world is solely focused on the success of our students at UAGC. And in thinking about student success and thinking about what we ask of our students, I think of things like asking them to be open with us, asking them to share with us their experience, asking them to be a little bit vulnerable. And so today I'm going to take a little bit of a pivot from how many of you typically see me present, which is heavy in data, heavy in analysis, and turn it a little bit more personal, because we ask our students to do that. And I think that when we think about leadership and a lot of our roles, it's about modeling what we're asking others to do. So I give you that little introduction so that you understand where I'm starting, and that's with my own story. So I'm going to start my story with college part one. And while I don't know if my story is common, I also don't really think it's unique. I was raised in a family that had two parents who were both college graduates. They were both first generation, but I had instilled in me that education is important, and you go through elementary and high school and you get good grades, and then you go to college and you get your degree, you start your career, you start your family. You know, success is right over there. You just go and get it. And that is not what I found out to be true for myself. I got great grades in high school. That was easy for me. I didn't need to learn how to study. Things just kind of came naturally. So it felt like I was on the right track. And right out of high school, I went to a 4-year private institution and lasted 1 year. And it was not a great experience. And I thought, that's okay. There's other schools. And so I went up the road about half an hour and went to a 4-year state university. And a year later, and that was not the right fit either. So I thought, okay, that's okay. Don't need to do 4-year. And my parents said, you just need to get an education, just find something that works. So tried a community college and then another one. And back then there was not online learning. You could do telelearning, I think it was called. You got a book, you studied on your own, you went to the library and took a proctored test. I was able to make it to 1 or 2 classes on the community college campus, but I needed to work. And so that's really where I put my focus until eventually school just wasn't a priority anymore. And so I worked construction and I worked retail and I worked in restaurants. I bartended on weekends for a while. I sold cell phones when they were at the height of their popularity and everybody wanted the flip phone with the camera that was attachable. That's when I was in the game. I worked customer service for a gas and utility company. And at some point I realized, what are you doing? You've got to get back to school. You need a degree. So that's where I moved on to chapter 2, which was college part 2. Now I am an adult. I realized at that point that open access institutions were really going to be the game changer for me. So I took my story, I took my 4 colleges, I took my slew of transfer credits, my crazy work schedule, my now husband and kids, my husband's elderly grandma who lived with us at the time, and I knocked on the door at UAGC. And UAGC said, come on in, there's a place for you here. And so I had to apply myself and I had to work hard, but I was given a chance. I was given an opportunity to get a high quality education that was accessible to me, that was affordable to me. And so I earned my degrees. I earned my bachelor's in business administration and went on to get my master's in human resource management. That took me to college part 3. College part 3 was not me being a student. College part 3 is me working for the university. Now I have the opportunity to champion open access, to tell other students that there's a place for you here, to build supports and structures. During part 3, I started in the registrar, as Brandy said. I worked in quality assurance, worked in student services with our academic advising teams, and now lead student success efforts. And through it all, I have had leaders who have opened their door, who have shared knowledge, given advice, modeled what leadership really should look like. So why do I tell you all of this? This is really what brings me here today. When TLC opened up their call for submissions, and presented the theme, which is working toward, yes, open access as innovation in higher education culture, I thought, wow, that is really powerful. But where do I fit into it? What do I have to offer? And I thought about my experience as a student in open access. I thought about my role, about how leadership, the journey of leadership is all about open access. And I thought, well, how do these really go together though? So when was the last time you had an aha moment? If you are not sure what I mean by that, I'm talking about when you have a couple of different things floating around your head and you think, surely these go together somehow, but I am just not finding the connection. The aha moment happens when suddenly they start to come together and you say, aha, I get it now. That is the fit. Well, that's what happened with me when I was thinking about putting in a submission for TLC. Open access and the concepts that go with it, and leadership and the concepts that go with that. How do they fit together? What does that mean? And what I realized in reflecting on that is that there are a lot of intersects, and that if we apply what we know about open access institutions, what they offer, why they're important, and we think about that in terms of leadership principles, we find that there are so many similarities that we can really model one after another in our own roles. So that's what I want to talk about today, is the intersect between open access institutions and the concepts there and leadership. And my hope is that whether you are starting your leadership journey, whether you're years and years in, whether you're a people leader or you lead from your role, there's something here that you can take away and reflect on at the end. So I do not pretend to be an expert. I have a lot to learn myself, but I just want to share some things that were impactful for me, both that I've learned from other leaders in my world and those that I've experienced myself. Share those with you and hope that you have a takeaway. So what exactly am I talking about here? If you think about some concepts in your head, open access, we're on day 2 of this conference. There's been a lot of ideas shared. You think of leadership and what you know. These words in this word cloud are actually words that I pulled directly from conference session titles. So all of these are found in the sessions that we have this week. But look at some of these. Do they not relate to leadership? Inclusivity, advocacy, empower. I mean, any number of these, there's an overlap. So I want to dig into just a few, share a little bit more of my story, and then ask you to think about how you would apply some of these to your roles. So the first one I want to look at is inclusivity. Sounds like a no-brainer, right? When we are leaders, we are here to help provide opportunities to others. Somebody at some point gave us an opportunity. Are we doing the same, and how do we create those? I had an incredible leader for many years who taught me 3 seemingly simple words that I've adopted, but it said so much about him as a leader, and that was tell me more. If I brought something to him, an idea, a question, a concern, first response was typically tell me more. He was modeling to me that he valued what I had to say, that he wanted to engage in conversation. He wanted to understand my perspective, and in that way be able to inform his own actions or response. So tell me more was really impactful because it gave me a voice. And so I then began to model that with my teams. The other mantra that I love and still try to live by is if it's important to you, it's important to me. That's how we include others into what we do. Who am I to decide if what you're saying is important or not? That doesn't come with a title, and that certainly is not how you would want a relationship to work. So if it's important to you, it's important to me. Tell me more and let me find out how I can help. Another one to think about is empowerment. How do we empower our students, right? How do we empower them to find their own path and walk beside them? We do the same thing when it comes to leadership. We should do the same thing. People need to drive their own path. They need to understand that while there are career pathing options, nobody's held to one rigid thing. We can change our minds at any time. Instead, we should follow our strengths. So are we leaders who help grow those strengths, help people realize them, identify with them? Do we give them the power to tell us what they need and then help us walk beside them on their path? I was thinking back to, I believe it was the first TLC I attended many, many years ago. And there was a leadership panel. And one of our leaders from the registrar was part of the panel. And at the end, there was time for Q&A. And I asked the question, do you have any advice for climbing the career ladder? Something like that. And her answer was so profound to me that it really changed my mindset. And to this day, I think of it often. Her answer was, it's not always a ladder. You don't always go up. Sometimes it's okay to go sideways. And sometimes you might even take a step back if that's going to get you where you want to go. That was like, blew my mind. Like, what? I don't have to like keep climbing, keep climbing, keep climbing. No, you can change your path. And that's what I did. I went from one department to another. I took chances on roles. I had to put the work in. I had to build my brand. I had to do all those things that mattered. But she had given me permission in that moment, unknowingly, to be able to make my own path, to go where I needed to go to achieve what I wanted to achieve. Not because it was predetermined, because it was built on my own strengths. So we need to do that as leaders, support that growth, encourage the autonomy, let people know. Your path can wind, it can go up, down, backwards, sideways, whatever you need to do, let me walk beside you and help support that. All right, accessibility, right? Open access is all about access. It's in the name. So what does accessibility mean as a leader? As an institution, we cannot make students prove their worthiness to us. Nobody has to prove that they're worthy of our help and support. Our door is open and we are going to commit to all students. And that's what we should do as leaders as well. Don't make people prove their worthiness. Let them come to you with what they need. Be what they need in the moment. Be a coach, be a mentor, be a teacher, whatever's called for. But don't be a gatekeeper. So think about your role. Do you hold things close to your chest? Do you only share the bits that are needed to be shared? Do you not let people behind the curtain like in Oz? How do you provide transparency? How do you make sure that people are getting what they need in a way that is building trust? I also think about barriers. We don't always know what barriers are there for people, but we have to take cues. We have to watch and listen. And again, that goes back to letting people forge their own path. I remember I learned this the hard way, where I thought development meant having people lead meetings and having people write emails. And that was, so I'd have my whole team do it. Everybody would get a turn. You're going to lead this month. You're going to lead that month. That wasn't everybody's strength. That was a barrier for some people People were frightened. People did not want, they wanted to do things behind the scenes. That was their comfort. And while I think it's important as leaders to help people stretch that comfort zone, it's also important to recognize not everybody's going to respond to the same thing. So how do we recognize barriers, make it okay, and then reduce them while still growing people, while still encouraging, stretching that comfort zone a bit? So I'll give you 2 examples that were really impactful. One of my VPs back in the day did something called a day in the life. It was always an open invitation. She would let you come and shadow her. If you want to see what it's like for a VP in student services, come sit with me for a morning, an hour, whatever that is, and get a glimpse into my world. But the caveat was that she would also come and sit with you. She wanted to learn. She wanted to see your perspective. And then when you would go sit with her, she would make sure to adapt and talk about and present things that might be important and play to your strengths. So what an awesome opportunity to take advantage of. Do we do that enough? Do we allow people in? The other thing I think about is just simply inviting people to the table. Does somebody have an interest in something that you go to a standing meeting for? Bring them along. Let them see how that conversation goes. Are you attending a webinar or a conference and you can share that experience? Can you simply just invite somebody to a Zoom coffee and say, tell me what's going on with you. Let me know how I can help. How's your experience? Personal invitations go a long way. And sometimes what comes with a title is the sense of authority where people are afraid to reach out and reach through. So sometimes it's on us as leaders to flip that script and just say, I want to invite you into my world. Will you come? And I want to talk just a minute about advocacy. This one's tricky, I think, as leaders, because there's 2 pieces to it. We should advocate for others. We should advocate for resources, for time, for information, for career development, growth opportunities. We should do that for our teams, but we also need, I'll go back to empower people to advocate for themselves. But use your network. If somebody's interested in learning more about a different department, a different area, and you know somebody that can help, make the connection. If somebody's going for a different role, connect with a hiring manager, share your experience and advocate for them. I think that there's power in that, and that shows your support of your team members as a leader. And I want to talk about lollipop moments. Is anybody familiar with lollipop moments or familiar with Drew Dudley? So Drew Dudley is an internationally acclaimed leadership speaker who most famously created the TED Talk called Everyday Leadership, the Lollipop Moment. And I'm not going to tell you the story about why it's called the lollipop moment, but I will say that I'm going to include a link to his TED Talk at the end of my presentation. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. But a lollipop moment is a moment when someone said or somebody did something that made your life fundamentally better. It's often very simplistic in nature and it might go unnoticed. So Mr. Dudley said, and I'll quote, sometimes we spend so much of our time celebrating amazing things that hardly anybody can do, that we've convinced ourselves that these are the only things worth celebrating, end quote. Lollipop moments are impactful moments that we probably didn't celebrate, but looking back, maybe we should have. So I'll just ask everybody to take a moment and think about someone who has impacted your journey as a leader. All they did was say something or do something simple, but it made a profound impact. Who are those people? What were those moments? Did you say thank you? And if you didn't say thank you, will you? How will you impact others? How will we leave this room today and create some lollipop moments? As leaders, these are the moments that we may not even be aware of, but really it's in our nature to try to do that because somebody changed the trajectory for us. If you think about it hard enough, you will come up with at least 1, probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 moments that were really impactful to you. But what do we do with that? And how do we pay it forward for the next group of emerging leaders? Those are the moments we should hold on to. And the last thing that I want to mention is our culture of care. So at UAGC, we have a culture of care, which really embraces how we work with our students and how we work with each other. It talks about several of the concepts that I've already mentioned, but it's all about communication, advocacy, respect, empowerment, and doing everything with a student focus. So if we do that for our students and we model that as leaders with our teams, how powerful does this become? And so when thinking about culture of care, we also need to think about how it wraps around all that we do. As leaders, if we model that culture, then we can expect the same from our teams. We will have a happy workplace of people who are growing, learning, thriving, and then they turn around and do the same for our students. So I'll close with this. What commitment will you make? Like I said, I'm sure I did not share anything earth-shattering, but everything we talked about applies to both us at UAGC as an open access institution, and it applies to us as leaders. And so when we go through the remainder of this conference, I think we can all think on that and reflect on that. What other intersects do we see? How do we see intersects with this and other aspects of our life? And then what commitment do we make? Will we celebrate more lollipop moments? Will we write that thank you that maybe we never got around to doing before? Will we adapt something into our vernacular? If it's important to you, it's important to me. Tell me more. And will we hold to that? And will we be accountable to ourselves to continue that? Will we enact something like a day in the life? Will we create opportunities? Will we invite people to the table? Leadership is all about growing, learning, adapting. And then once you have a seat at the table, it's up to you to invite others to join you. So I'm so appreciative of everyone joining me today. It's such an important topic to think about, to reflect on. I'm sharing the TED Talk link here. I realize now it's not a link, but if you want to jot it down, or you can just search out Drew Dudley. It was at a TEDx Toronto, very easy to find, very popular TED Talk. But I'm going to stop sharing now and would just love to hear from you if you have any thoughts, questions. We have just a few more minutes together.
We had lots of great comments in the chat. Folks really love the comments you made on the importance of the open door policy and recognizing barriers, but doing so in a way that you can focus and grow beyond those. And it really resonated with me when the idea of paying it forward, because as you said, we've all had those folks that have helped us along the way, whether it was, formal or informal mentoring, or maybe just encouraging us to do something that we didn't think that we could do. And I think, when we're able to step out of our comfort zone and accomplish things, we have an obligation to pass that along and to encourage others the same way. And I know that's something that we've really been doing a lot in the culture of care. And in fact, this might be something interesting to talk about too. We talk about culture of care a lot, in terms of, working with our student population, but something that we've been focusing on a lot, at least in FSBT, is how we can do a better job of using that same culture of care with our associate faculty. And so what are your thoughts on that? Any suggestions there?
So important, and we have so much opportunity in that area, because certainly culture of care encompasses taking care of our students, but more than that, it's taking care of each other as well, of treating each other with respect, of being clear in our communication, but also being mindful of roles and bandwidth, and finding ways to what I like to say is make it a little easier to spend time with students. Are there things in our world that are administrative, that are clunky, that are time consuming, stressful? What can we take off the plate there to make our interactions on the student side even better? Because quite honestly, while that's good for our students, which is why we're all here, it's also good for us. It's good for our work environment. It's good to know that our teams have our backs across departments, across functions. We've got to show support for each other. So I think we've got a great opportunity in that area, and something that I hope that we all take an active role in working towards over the coming months and years. I think the other thing you touched on that I just want to call out, it didn't make it to my slide, but really important, is that it's totally acceptable for us when working with students to recognize challenges, whether it's an unexpected absence, a failing grade, whatever it is, we say that's okay. Let's figure out a plan. How can we overcome that? How can we learn from that and grow and succeed? And we should be doing that in our own roles as well. It's okay to take a risk and it's okay to fail at things every once in a while. What do we do with that? And how, as leaders, do we create an environment where people have the ability to take a risk, to maybe fail, but to learn something, and the next time around maybe see success? That's something that's hard to do because I think all of us personally, don't ever want to encounter that, but it's the reality. And I think of the graduate stories that we hear from students and the things that they overcome, and that is where the power is. It is great for the student who went to college right out of high school and got straight A's and got their degree and went on. And that's wonderful. And that's, of course, excellent. But show me the student that had to overcome some things, that has that grit, that has that tenacity, that stick-to-itiveness. We need to do that as leaders as well, because that's where those real power stories come from.
Absolutely. That's definitely true. This past year at the May graduation, we had a table with the Center for Women's Leadership, and we did a grit survey, and we surveyed over 100 of our graduates. And exactly what you said, the themes that kept recurring in terms of what drove your success, what got you to this moment. It was resilience, it was the determination, it was the tenacity, it was the ability to face those obstacles head on and get past them. So yeah, absolutely. We got just a couple more minutes. Are there any final questions before we close out, guys?
I just wanted to say I really love that concept of finding out what those barriers are and finding other ways to get someone to that point of growth, because I know that that's something I've seen a lot of in the TLC sessions that I've been participating in, is really understanding like what are the barriers to our students finding success? Is it the curriculum? Is it the way that we present the questions? Is it the format? And as leaders, I think we often think this is the way that each team member needs to approach something, or I need to give each team member the exact same opportunities and that's going to help them grow. And so I love that point where sometimes we need to adapt that in order to find ways to push people to their growth opportunity without eliminating it because we gave them something that wasn't the right path for them. So that really opened up my mind in terms of like how to apply it to leadership.
Yes, excellent point. Sometimes it's as easy as just asking too, what am I doing as a leader that is getting in your way? What could I do differently? Just ask it. People will answer you. Otherwise, you're left trying to assume and connect the dots. But we just need to be comfortable asking. Share with me what these barriers are. I'm here to help overcome.
Well, a huge thank you to you, Stephanie, for being here with us today and presenting on this important topic of open access learning and open access leadership. Big thank you to our audience members for attending our session. We encourage you to attend the next presentation, Early Childhood Education Learning Community Retention Study, which takes place directly following this session. So enjoy the rest of your day here at TLC.
Thank you all.